Okay. Hello. Uh, this is my very first live stream. Never done this before. Please be gentle. Uh, yeah. So, just kind of a chatting thing. Kind of want to see how this went, and we'll go from there, okay? All right. So, yes, a little bit of shameless self-promotion before we get going. We got this. Where's my camera? There we are. Called the Rules of Profit. I do this a lot on Twitter. It's a bunch of rules that I use when I, uh, do business, talk to people, things like that. Things like home is where the heart is. That's number 28. Okay? And risk when well handled is opportunity. That's number 29. Okay? We've got another one coming up right here. And I'm still learning how to use my streaming software, so I'll have to figure some stuff out here. Okay? All right. So, another one, Rule 50, is learn manners from the person who has none. If you don't figure that one out, you're kind of dumb. Okay? So, got another book here. This is Homo sapiens mysticus. This is an in-universe book for my novel series that I'm writing. Book 1 is called The Hidden Race. Book 2 is called Stonecutter. Book 3, I'm only 20,000 words in, so be patient. I don't even have it titled yet. I've got a pretty good idea what happens, though. But this is about, it's about the Fae and about how weird they go. It's technically a textbook. Okay, you can get this and this. You can get them both on Amazon, and this guy right here. This is also a lore book. Okay, so let's dive into Homo sapiens mysticus, because why not? And we'll go from there. Okay, before I do that, though, I kind of want to see if I can get chat up and running. Oh, boy. Let's see here. I have no idea. Oh, well. What do you do? Let me try jumping on YouTube. Videos. Okay. It's odd. Okay. All right. Well, I have no idea. Not quite sure how this works. Like I said, very first time ever doing this. And let's do live on YouTube. Post. Let's see if anybody shows. We'll see. Anyway, back to where we were. All right. So let's dive into this. Okay. Remember, I am still kind of sussing stuff out, so be patient with me. Okay. All right. I was going to do kind of a simple video on this, just kind of go through it. But maybe do that later. We'll see. Okay. Now, chapter 1 is all about how ecosystems work. I talk about the different types of organisms. There's feeders, producers. Okay. I'm using different terminology here purposely because I want you to get the feel that this is a completely different universe. This is not the same thing, but it's close enough to where you can follow what he's saying. Okay. So we've got predators. Those eat the feeders. Okay. Scavengers and decomposers eat whatever is left. Then you got parasites. Easy peasy. Okay. Then I talk about how the niches relate into the Fae and how each separate breed does something slightly different. Okay. And go kind of through the basics of evolution and how things are set up. Okay. I then talk about the exact nature of the Fae and how humans are a subspecies. I always do that. It's because I'm backwards. So, the Fae are a subspecies of Homo sapiens. The scientific classification for the Fae is Homo sapiens mysticus. Anatomically, the Fae are exactly like normal humans. The Fae have 23 pairs of chromosomes contained in a typically eukaryotic cell. The internal organs are the same and of similar proportions to those of humans. The Fae are bipedal and bidextrous, with the addition of an opposable thumb. To merely look at the body of a given member of the Fae, they are physically indistinguishable from normal humans. The difference between the two subspecies then lies in the chemistry of the Fae when compared to humans. This is caused by the differences between the comparative DNA of both Fae and humans. Interestingly, the differences are actually very subtle when compared on a macro scale. Although Fae and humans have the same number of chromosomes, their size and arrangement vary wildly between the different breeds of Fae. This could also be on the micro scale. Meaning, just because you got two wood nymphs does not mean their DNA is all but identical. There could be, a copularis in the wood pile, if you will. Anyway, for example, the breed known as Linon seed, when compared to the DNA of an average human, has 3,700 mutations spread out over the chromosomes. Because of these differences, the protein coatings that are performed by the cell in order to create various cellular and bodily functions are different. Things such as enzymes, hormones, structural components, and material storage change in some rather drastic ways. It is from these differences that the more physical types of Fae, like the Linon seed, copulary, and nymphs, are able to do the things that they can. This, however, does not account for everything. One of the characteristics of all breeds of Fae is the fact that they can feed on different types of energy and various emotional states of other beings, even if they are not in direct contact. How is this possible? The answer, near as can be surmised, lies in quantum physics. According to the rather complicated laws of this branch of physics, the destiny of a particle can be manipulated through desire, meaning slight changes can be made if there is sufficient will. More elaboration on this is certainly needed, but that would be beyond the scope of this book. Okay. And we'll go ahead and leave that chapter right there. Okay. Now, at the top of each chapter are sketches. Move that in a little bit. I did do a video on my books a little while ago. I didn't read very much, but that's kind of what this live thing is. Okay. And I'm not going to spend the whole time on this. Come on. I'm not going to bore you to death. Okay. These were actually done by a girl that I work with. Her name is Sierra Johnson. Don't know if she has a website yet. She was getting to it last time I spoke with her. We'll see. She's an artist. What do you do? All right. So, nymphs are a very interesting group of several breeds. They are so grouped because of their common proximity to the Mediterranean Sea and much of Western Europe. The nymphs are typically comprised of the Sullus, wooden water nymphs, copulary, vela, and bacchae. Another reason for these to be grouped together is also because they tend to either feed upon or use some sort of primal energy or emotion. What follows is an explanation of each different breed and their subbreeds. Okay, so the Sullus, which is Homo sapiens mysticus Sullus, and I actually do go into how naming conventions work when you're designating a given species. Typically, whenever we name something, we go as far as Homo sapiens. Okay, that's human. That's our genus. Well, the genus is Homo. The species is sapiens. And with us, regular humans, it would be sapiens again. That's the subspecies. Okay, but with this, it'd be mysticus because they're hidden. They're unknown. Okay, and then the breed is Sullus. I do go on to say in this chapter that there's two subbreeds of Sullus. That is the Fulmer, which is they can throw lightning, and the Lumen, which is light shows. Okay? So it would be Homo sapiens mysticus Sullus lumen if you were talking about one that could like heal you with touching their hands and stuff like that. They can modulate light. Okay, pretty neat. And in universe, that gets used to quite a bit of stuff. Okay. All right. Then we got wood nymphs, we got the dryad, we got the wisp, we got the larrae, we got the land white, and the body bat. Body bat are kind of neat. They kind of merge with trees. We got water nymphs. That would be the naiad, the siren, the adunk. They baptize you, and then you go crazy. The myrrh. Yes. They're not fish, though. No, that's dumb. Okay. We got the near nymph breeds. This is where the bacchae and the copulari come in. The copulari are the succubus and the incubus. They feed on good old nookie. Oh, yes. Even passion. So there. Okay. And then you got the vela. They're actually an offshoot of the Sullus, but there's enough of a variance between them that they are only near nymph. After them come the sylph. The sylph are vela that no longer feed on electricity or fire. Instead, they have to travel and, well, they feed on negative emotions. Yeah. Okay. Next up is elves. This includes, the true elves, the Mare, these are dream eaters, and the Valkyrie. Oh, yes. We're going there, baby. We got the Fae of Service. There's two of these. There's the brownie and the lean on seed. No, not that kind of brownie. Okay. Then you got the Fae of Desire, which are the leprechaun and the dire. You would think it would be the lean on seed, but no, they don't grant desires. They just want to take things. Okay. Then you got the early Fae, which are ogres, Jinn. Jinn can throw fire. Okay. So according to the old Arabic lore, the Jinn are basically the Ifrit, and all other forms of Jinn, according to old Arabic lore, are just other breeds of Fae that have come in. Okay. Then we got the Frost Giant. Yeah, they make things really, really cold, and I actually go into a reason for this. Okay, so the HSM Frigus, I know, sounds like a ship, doesn't it? I like it. Or the Frost Giant has the ability to create cold. This ability stems from the release of ammonium nitrate that is aerosolized into the local area to create a zone of effect. The result is that air and objects in the immediate area lose energy and therefore get cold. Okay? The effect is the direct result of the ammonium nitrate reacting with a local water vapor. While the release method of the chemical is not completely understood at this time and further research is needed, we do know that the ammonium nitrate is definitely stored in the skin and likely released in some fashion through the pores. This is due to the fact that when a frost giant uses their ability, their skin, especially around the face, seems to shrink, gray out, and starts to resemble a skull. Terrifying. The major question, much like that of the Jinn, is why doesn't this breed of Fae get injured from their own ability? Just like the Jinn, the Frost Giant has an inborn countermeasure. With Frost Giants, that countermeasure lies in their imposing size and in their rather fast metabolism mixed with their naturally high body fat. In warmer climates such as in Kidron and many other far northern parts of the American South, frost giants tend to be slimmer than their more northerly brethren. This is because of the higher levels of ambient energy, i.e. heat. Their ability will have a much less permanent effect and therefore will not pose much of a risk or of damage. It is advised that a member of the frost giant breed consume a great deal of protein in order for the body to actually produce enough of the ammonia from the nitrogen inherent in the protein molecules. The additional effect of the high metabolism requires rather frequent consumption of food just to maintain basic bodily functions. The natural range of the frost giants is Northern Europe, especially around Skanda, and into Prussia, Poland, and Russia. Now, I changed some of the history in that universe. That's why we have this. Okay, and I explain all of that in that book. Okay, it comes in with, well, the Fae exists, so history is going to be at least a touch different. Okay, and we got specific Asiatic breeds. Okay, we've got the Luduan. These guys eat truth and facts. Okay, you lie to them, they know. Okay, and the Wanbli. The Wanbli are, although they are Asiatic, they are exclusively found in the Americas. Best trackers on the planet. I actually have one character there. Okay, and the Kitsune. I haven't named any Kitsune, but these guys have posed a huge thing throughout history. Okay, and I go into that in the other book. Okay, I also have stereotypes and misconceptions. Okay, this is where I break down, you know, do they eat people? No. Do they drink blood? No. Their anatomy. No, they don't have any extra body parts. There's no horns, tails, wings. There's no shape shifting. Okay, stuff like that. Okay. There are also no grotesque breeds of Fae, such as you're not going to find a worm-looking thing. They're part of Homo sapiens, again, indistinguishable. Okay, you're not going to get anything extra with them. Okay, and I also go into interbreeding and a bunch of first-hand accounts. There's 10 of them, some of which are human, others are Fae with weakened or slightly different powers than they should, and we go from there. Okay. I also have, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, family tree. Oh yeah, that's in there. So we got Homo sapiens starting off. We got an offshoot that came off of there. They went extinct. Okay, then you got Homo sapiens sapiens and normal humans. Then you got Homo sapiens mysticus, the early true Fae. Okay, that splits off, and a bunch of unknowns that we can never know because, well, they're all dead. We got the early nymphs, which break off, become the water, then differentiate in the naiad, the myrrh, the siren, and the adunk. Then the wood nymphs come off of that. Okay. Most of the distinctions between wood nymphs are largely cultural, so it's more how well they do. And then the Solus branches off of that, and you got the Lumen and the Fulmer over here. The Vela branch off of that, Sylph branches there, and those become the early elf because the ogres, after the Bingwa were made, they interbred with the Sylph and created the elves. Okay, frost giants also break off of the ogre, and so did the Jinn. A little bit afterwards, you got the Luduan, the Wanbi, and the Kitsune. The early elves split off into the Mare, the true elves, and the Valkyrie. Easy peasy. Okay. By the way, took me a while to figure that one. Okay. Now, I do want to say, if you are a fan fiction writer, I actually do want to hear from you. This is on the website. There's a bunch of rules associated. Feel free to go to my website and pitch your idea. Okay? I actually want to hear it. Okay? Mostly because I don't have the frickin' time to do everything. I'm so busy. Okay? All right. These are, however, non-negotiable. They are on the website. Feel free to check them out. Okay? All right. So, let's go to the other one. Let's go to Fae Earth, and I'm going to have to figure some stuff out. Let's do this. Okay. And by the way, this is dedicated to a fellow YouTuber. His name is Cody. He runs Alternate History Hub, one of my favorite channels. Cody, if you ever hear about this, you want a copy of it, it's yours, dude. I'll even sign it for you. Just let me know, okay? I follow you on Twitter, by the way, Booby. All right. So, we do have a map of the Earth here. This took me 4 days to do. A little bit different, wouldn't you say? Hopefully you know your geography. So let's look at the introduction. Okay. Basically, this goes in talking about the ways things can move, how rulers come up, and all of that. Then I go in by geographic region. We've got Asia. I give you the history of Mongolia. Things are just a slight bit different. Okay. Good old Chinggis Khan. He used a lot of ogres actually in his band. So the Mongol Empire was basically a little bit stronger, but it didn't change that much because of infighting. Okay, Jochi, Chagatai, and Tului still had their issues. Okay, so the empire got split three ways, and Kublai came to power in 1259. Okay. With the help of Marco Polo of Venice, Kublai Khan conquered the Empire of China in 1271. A little bit different in our timeline. I think he did it about a year earlier, if I remember correctly. Kublai moved the imperial power back to Karakorum. The reason being is he didn't trust the Chinese. Okay? So he consolidated power in Mongolia proper rather than taking over the empire of his son. Okay? Well, no, that would be Japan. Anyway. Okay? They did go as far as Prague by the summer of 1294, but were pushed back because Kublai died. And there's a couple of hidden reasons as to why. I'm kind of alluding that he was Fey, but maybe not. Yeah. Okay. Various generals took a piece of land as the Mongol Empire fragmented. They returned to a warring scourge of most civilizations until 1333, when Timur rose to power and reconstituted much of the empire. However, he based out of China and reconquered Tibet, the Turkish kingdoms as far west as Minsk. Okay. However, Timur was forced to halt his expansion when his navy was defeated by the Japanese. The Second Mongol Empire lasted until 1350, when Timur's son was killed by a jealous cousin over a wife. The empire fragmented into various khanates until about 1390, when the successor states were eventually overthrown and the original peoples regained their autonomy. Okay? Remember, just because you can conquer something doesn't mean you get to keep it. Okay? Then we talk about Tibet. Yes, Tibet has an actual history, and by the way, in this universe, Tibet is an independent country. That has to do with some shenanigans with China. Okay? Tibet still becomes hardcore Buddhist. Okay? As Buddhist monks continued to spread their religion, Tibet took on an almost sacred place for a significant number of the population in Asia, including Muslims and Hindus, just because it was so freaking cool. Okay? This prevented military incursions for centuries until the Ming dynasty from China managed to conquer the mountain state for a period of a century starting in 1650. When the Ming waned and the Qing took over, Tibet was released. No one has attempted to conquer or annex Tibet since. What? We'll get to that. Okay? Alright, so we got the Qing dynasty. Okay, the Qing dynasty began with a political ethnic rebellion originating in Manchu. As the rebellion spread, the emperor was forced to capitulate and the nation changed. The Qing lasted until, with largely open borders to the west, slightly different in our world, the Qing were more isolationist. Okay? This allowed the nation to grow and prosper until the start of the Great War. In our timeline, it's called World War I. Because of the complex web of alliances, many nations ceased trade with China and the economy faltered. Certain ethnic groups within China saw their chance and they rose up in revolt. The imperial army was able to put down all pockets of rebellion. However, the results weakened the nation as a whole. It's called a civil war. They don't go well, dude. Okay? This event is explained further in the book. It's actually in the hidden history section. Okay, we go into the history of India. This section's pretty long. No, I'm not going to read it. If you want to read it, that's up to you. The Gupta do come to power. Persia conquers quite a bit of it. The Ganesvids take over. And Bactria at the time was a thing. Lots going on there. Gupta falls apart. Delhi comes to power. Delhi Sultanate. Vasco da Gama shows up, though, in 1498. And sets up the colony of Goa. And the local Indians kick the Portuguese out in 1517. That's a big deal. Okay. Third Mongol invasion in 1524 establishes the Mughal. And then the English move in long about 1660. Okay. And they set up, their little trade empire there. Okay. And basically turn the entire subcontinent into a puppet state. Okay. Bengal revolted against the British in 1750. Bengali government did not sanction the action. However, the rebellion was started by a Hindu priestly class in Plassey and then spread into Dhaka. Okay. The rebellion went hot very fast, but the superior British military technology and tactics put down the rebellion within a year. Did not ultimately halt the arrest. Extra men from all over the British Empire were drafted and sent to Bengal to maintain control over what was becoming a province of the empire. This contributed to the American Rebellion in 1776. Completely different history. Okay? 1762, the Mughal Empire crumbled after an unknown assassin killed Babur III. While the identity is debated even to this day, it was most likely an agent sent by the British. The resulting petty kingdoms were quickly gobbled up by the British, either through diplomacy or conquest. Maratha was forced to subjugate or face annihilation, as was Lanka. That would be Sri Lanka in our timeline. By 1770, all of the subcontinent was controlled by the British Crown. However, the control was tenuous at best. Rioting and acts of terror were commonplace in most of the cities. After the completion of the American Revolt in 1780, troops were made available for enforcement, and the unrest was all but halted. Okay? So, it is because of the unrest in India that the Americans have their independence. Okay? A little bit different. So, the British abandoned India during the Great War instead of waiting through World War II and getting kicked out in the 1950s, okay, by Gandhi and his buddies. Okay? Instead, they devolve into kind of sectarian warfare, okay, usually along religious and ethnic lines, and all Indians kind of figure out, this is stupid. Let's see if we can figure this out. Okay, so 1948, Mass Subcontinent Congress comes up, and they talk about unifying India, but they can't do it. Okay, so what they do is they split the country up into Nepal, Bengal, Delistan, Maratha, Visayas, and Lanka, if I remember correctly. Let me double check my map here. Oh, not Visayas, Nagpurahana. Okay. That is, it's named after a Nagpura, which became a seat of a weird sect of Buddhism. Instead of being pacifists, like in Zen Buddhism and in Tibetan Buddhism, they're all about the warfare. Okay, they have one of the best militaries in the area. Okay, all right. We got Siam, not Thailand. Okay, Japan. Also is a full-on empire because the United States never went to war with Japan because Japan decided not to attack Hawaii. Okay, so they control Korea, Manchuria, and what we call the Philippines. Okay, A lot of history there. Then we go into the history of Europe. We talk about the ancient history, history of Rome. Mark Antony, by the way, defeated Augustus and otherwise known as Octavian, and he kind of had a dual capital thing going on. Political power was nestled in Roma, whereas cultural power was nestled in Egypt. Completely different from our timeline. Cleopatra dies of alcoholism, and her son Caesarion comes to power, and then basically history resets. Okay? We talk about the British Isles, how important the Fae were there, and what the Oath of Secrecy did. Okay, we talk about Spain, Germania. By the way, Germany is not a country in this timeline. It's actually a series of little countries. What do you know? Okay? All right, we're doing well here, about 31 minutes in. Okay? We talk about Northern Europe. We got Poland and Russia. Okay? This is where I talk about the creation of Skanda. Okay? Poland, by the way, had a little bit different of a history. See, way back when, Poland was the country you worried about if you were Eastern European. Okay? If you lived in Poland, life was good. Okay? Russia was the one getting slapped around. Then things changed. Okay? It has to do with a war called the Great Northern War. In this timeline, that goes a little bit differently. Okay? Let's see here. Okay? And now they did extend all the way from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea at one time. That was in the mid-1500s. The Great Northern War started and lasted for about 10 years. That was in 1600. Poland and Russia were allied and decided to invade and conquer Sweden. Poland, being the leader, invaded the Baltic territories and took them within about 2 years. Russia provided occupation power while the Polish army moved across the sea to mainland Sweden. Additionally, Russia attacked Swedish holdings in Finland. By 1607, Sweden called on Norway to join in to prevent Sweden from being wiped out. Norway joined in the fight and ended the war in 1610. Poland gained the Baltics and Russia gained Finland. A bit different. Okay. We talk about Austria. They entered into a Cold War with Poland. At the end of the Great War, Sweden was severely beaten down and the economy showed no signs of recovering. Norway offered to protect Sweden during their recovery. By 1720, Sweden was fully vassalized to Norway. By 1760, Denmark invaded an ailing Norway thanks to their propping up of Sweden. Denmark was able to conquer Scandinavia in 1777 by blockading both Oslo and Stockholm. The resulting nation was then named Skanda in 1779. The once three separate monarchies were reconstituted into a triumvirate republic with a full parliament seated in Copenhagen. The Dutch revolt against the Spanish in 1568 after the 80 Years' War. 40 years later, the Republic of the Netherlands split in half, resulting in the formation of Belgium and the Netherlands, which was more of a confederation similar to the Holy Roman Empire, but with more of a republic basis of government. After a near century of instability and economic depression, the Netherlands managed to set up their first colonies in the New World, starting with New Amsterdam on the island of Manhattan in 1624. This was done in an effort to stabilize the country by shipping off malcontents. However, since the government was losing money at a frightening rate, the island and colony were sold to the British in 1664, and the British colony of New York was born, along with other colonies of New England. Okay? Then we talk about France. By the way, France controls the lowlands. Okay? Belgium and Netherlands do not exist in this timeline. Okay? It has to do with the Louis and how they decided to attack. By the way, Napoleon, this is one of the major departures, survived, okay, because he didn't go to Russia. Okay, he actually maintained amicable terms with Alexander, and well, he was able to take over quite a bit of Europe. Actually, founded an empire. And he died And let me see here. Okay, Napoleon I was able to convince Tsar Alexander everything was fine and the trade would resume. Alexander accepted, and war was averted. The German states were then pitted against each other through espionage, and political balance was restored to the region. So, the continental system worked in this timeline. Okay, Napoleon met and married Celeste de Leon in 1790 instead of Josephine, because she was a hoe. Okay. And when he was named emperor 15 years later. She was named empress, and their son Napoleon II was named prince. Napoleon II was named emperor after the death of his father in 1821. He was 28 years old. His reign lasted 28 years when his brother Claude I assassinated him and seized power in 1841. At 53, Claude I died of an apparent heart attack, and his son Alphonse I took power at 25 in 1850. He held the throne for 27 years until deciding to retire and pass the throne on to his daughter Monique I in 1877. Her reign was rather bloody and oppressive for the peoples near the Italian border. One day in 1887, she was attacked while in Nice and killed by slipping and splitting her head open. She was succeeded by her brother Napoleon III. She ruled until the start of the Great War in 1912. It was his daughter Monique that was one of the causes of the conflict. And if you know a lot about World War I history, that is actually a thing. Okay, Alphonse II took power on his 21st birthday in 1912. He was a shrewd tactician, and to his credit, that the war went as well as it did. However, he chose the wrong diplomat to plead terms in the Treaty of Bern in 1916. The limitations of peace set upon the French Empire were as follows. They were not allowed to meddle in the affairs of Italy, Spain, or any nations in the German zone without express invitation from that nation. They are not allowed to expand their territorial holdings. They must release Corsica by 1950. The terms were agreed, and Alphonse remained as emperor until he was assassinated in 1940 by a Catalan spy loyal to Spain. Alphonse's son, Napoleon IV, took power at 23 and improved the war effort. The pre-war borders were maintained due to the severe wartime issues. In 1941, Corsica was released from the French Empire, and the treaty was upheld. Now, I get into what that war actually is. It's not World War II, it's the Great Roman War. And we'll get into that when we get to Italy. Okay? So, Corsica being released were as follows. They would under no circumstances ally or trade with Italy/Roma or its allies. While they can allow travelers from nations, they cannot enter into an alliance with any nation allied with either France or Roma. What's Roma? Well, the Roman Empire decided to reassert itself. Yep, we'll get to that in history of the 20th century. Okay? So, currently, Claude III is the current empire. And, okay. So, all right. We got the Middle East. We got Persia. By the way, it's not called Iran. Totally different country. Okay, we got the rise of the Ottomans. Lot of interesting stuff happened in what we call Turkey. Okay. Then there's Levanta. Totally different country here. It's actually a synthesis of what we call Israel, Syria, Lebanon, and most of Jordan. Okay, and its birth goes all the way back to the Crusades. The Crusader states actually survived because Saladin never came to power. Really interesting country. They have two governments. One is the secular government, which is something resembling a Republican base, and then they have a religious government, which is made up of representatives from Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. They don't always get along, and no, it's not a great and wonderful place as you might think it is. Okay, Iraq is a very interesting place. We're not going to go into that right now. Arabia, however, much more interesting. In our timeline, Arabia is a monarchy. Okay? In this one, though, it's a tribal republic. Yeah. Okay? Lots of history there. We're not going to go into it. But it is illegal to be Fae in Arabia. Okay? Big humanitarian crisis going on because they don't trust the jinn. Okay? All right, then we talk about Africa. So we got Egypt and Nubia together. Nubia, by the way, is what we call Sudan. Okay? Different history there. Okay? West Africa and Congo. Congo, by the way, is a country and it's spelled with a K. Yep. They're the big one. Okay? We got a whole history of East Africa. Lots of stuff going on with Arab and Persian traders. Mozambique is a country still, so is Tanzania. Borders are slightly different. But Northern Africa, Mauritania is a country. I do talk about the slave trade there, though. Okay? And I go into the history of the triangle trade. Okay? Because, well, duh. Okay? Modern Africa. It's very similar to our timeline, but there's a lot more political power in Congo. They are the superpower, at least the regional superpower in Africa, okay? And Nigeria is their main rival, okay? Talk about North America, how things work here. We don't call it the Revolutionary War. It is the American Revolt. We go through the 19th century and antebellum South, okay? Then we get into what we call the Civil War. In this timeline, it is called the Southern Revolt, okay? Because, duh, it's a revolt, okay? And we got the nation of Caribe, okay? Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the island of Hispaniola, which is Haiti and the Dominican Republic, are all one country. Lots of history there, and they are a neutral, mercantilist republic now, okay? A lot going on there. Then I talk about the setting of the story, Kidron City, okay? It is an area called Utah, spelled Y-U-T-A, and if you know where that is, yeah, okay? Let's see here. Originally settled by a Clovis tribe in about 10,000 BCE. The tribe eventually split and diversified. Over thousands of years, they took on many names and lived in largely the same areas, I need water, that were good for farming and relatively kind with elements. Okay. In 1766, a Jesuit priest named Father Silvestre Escalante, actual person, by the way, from our timeline, surveyed this vast territory. He was originally from Sevilla, but migrated to New Spain, later called Mexico, in 1764. After gaining his vestments, he was tasked by the governor, along with 3 other men, to survey the lands of the north and convert any natives to Christianity. They left from Santa Fe in March of 1766. After passing through several red rock deserts, the party arrived in the Ute Valley. On August of 1766, they stayed for a month, teaching and converting members of the local Ute tribe. In September of 1766, they entered the Kidron Valley. It was so named because it resembled a narrow valley between the old city of Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives. Additionally, the presence of a dead inland sea that would come to be called Lake Escalante, not the Great Salt Lake, influenced naming of the valley. In the east of the valley, 3 large mountains were noted. As the party wintered there, they found that the runoff and water were plentiful. Additionally, the area between the 2 main canyon rivers was fairly fertile for local farms. By Christmas, they were back in the Ute Valley, where they completed their work on the mission, and by the spring, the party returned to Santa Fe. Once the report was placed with the northern governor, colonists were enlisted, and a settlement was established in the Ute Valley in 1770. It took only 3 years before the natives began rising up against the Spanish colonists. By the winter of 1775, the settlement was abandoned. Political instability in various cities in New Spain made restarting the settlement difficult. In 1780, a policy of encroachment was attempted with the settlement of some mountain towns in the Colorado Plateau. Despite hardships inherent to the deserts, the towns thrived and were included in the secession when Mexico declared independence from Spain in 1794. The towns continued and fared well until the Americans purchased Louisiana from the growing French Empire in 1803 from Napoleon I. While Mexico held settled claim to the southwest of the continent, the borders were not firm, and much of what was coming to be called Colorado and Utah were potentially part of the newly gained American territory. This was due to the secret treaty between Spain and France in 1796. When the Spanish realized that they had no exercisable ability to develop anything in North America after the American Revolt, Napoleon realized that thanks to their constant war in Europe, he would never be able to use the American territory and opted to sell it to the Americans as Mexico was still in recovery from its revolution. The Americans accepted, and the Lewis and Clark expedition took place in 1805, basically the same as our timeline. Claims in Colorado and Utah were posted on May 25, 1820, to the Mexican government from the growing United States. California declared independence from Mexico in 1835 and only became recognized in 1840 after allying itself with the Americans. As more Americans began pouring in, political tides shifted, and by 1851, California was inducted into the United States as claims persisted in Colorado and Utah. American settlers continued to enter what was sovereign Mexican land, but in dispute. In 1846, a group of English Anglicans and Irish Catholics attempted to create a society where the two could live in peace out of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Set out for the Sierra Nevada mountains. Due to some incidental losses while crossing the plains from St. Louis, they decided to stay in Utah in the Kidron Valley. The settlement that would be called Kidron City was officially founded on March 23, 1847, after the first winter was deemed successful. The military outpost of Fort Kidron was erected that summer to hold off any native attacks on the nearby settlement. The first buildings were set down, and what would become downtown Kidron was laid out on what was then the new exciting grid pattern. I'll leave that there. This was done at the foot of what would be O'Sullivan Mountain, named for the town's first mayor, who was assassinated 2 years into his office. The northern peak was called Olympus due to its resemblance to the famous Greek mountain and home of the gods. The valley's southern peak was called Storm Mountain due to its preponderance to be cloaked in clouds. These are real peaks, by the way. Due to the illegal settlement of not only Kidron, but also many other places in Colorado and Utah, the Mexican government issued a warning to the United States in February of 1851. They were told to remove the illegal settlers or face war. The Americans chose war. What? The U.S., along with their allies in the Republic of Texas, attacked the Mexican garrison in El Paso on April 1st, 1851. While the Northern American settlements being well guarded, and most of the fighting happening near the Gulf of Mexico, the American push to Teotihuacan was fast. We call that place Mexico City. Okay. In 1853, the Mexican army was soundly defeated, and the American Southwest was seceded to the winning nation. As a condition, Mexico was required to function as a vassal state to the Americans. The first city hall in Kidron was built in 1857, along with the first courthouse. As the village began to grow into a town with more and more settlers moving in, much of the farmland began to be converted to housing and industry and a few areas of commerce. While searching for gold, the first copper mine was started in the Ochre Mountains, west of Kidron in 1860. 1 month before the Southern Revolt. Much of the manufacturing and mineral industries were then moved to the west side of the valley and headed by Irish families and light immigrants. Their secondary the settlement was placed just north of the mines in an area called Loch Norte. As more people moved in, an additional settlement called Calvin was started in 1864. The new city of Calvin came to share the east border of Loch Norte. In 1865, the Southern Revolt ended, and life in the U.S. returned to normal. Kidron boomed as more people continued to pour in. However, it remained largely a farming and mining town on the verge of becoming a true city until 1922, when the first wave of Jewish immigrants from Central Europe moved into the near wilderness of the northeast corner of the valley. They were fleeing the political unrest in the German zone and the newly named USSR. This first group would create what would come to be called the Hills District. They would also be instrumental in founding of Stanton University in the shadow of Storm Mountain in 1925. Named for Richard Stanton, the university was founded on the basis that anyone could be admitted to learn science and culture if they could pay tuition. Over the next 20 years, more Jewish immigrants would settle in the area, this time coming from the eastern cities of New York and Philadelphia, among others. Additionally, the unrest spawned by the Great Roman War brought in many more peoples from many parts of Europe. Creativity held by these people, along with their ties to friends and relatives in places like Los Angeles, created a secondary entertainment capital from Hollywoodland. In 1943, a revivalist form of jazz was started in Kidron and came to characterize much of the popular culture in the 1940s and into the 1950s, when rock and roll started in the Midwest in 1954. Thanks to the slower lifestyle and quieter city, many silver screen stars and recording artists relocated to Kidron and settled primarily in the hills. This would be the norm for decades to come. It was in the 1950s that the areas of Heroic in the southwest corner and Jordana in the middle part of the valley near the river were significantly settled. The area around the university, called Stanton, was significantly developed by 1959. The only part of the valley not settled was the Escalante Wash on the southeast corner of the lake. Attempts were made in the 1920s through the 1940s, but environmental reasons prevented any permanent settlement. Today, it is a nature reserve. The political and social disturbance of the 1960s came hard to Kidron, beginning at Stanton University in 1967. Rioting and protests regarding the war were commonplace. By 1969, the same was found in other parts of the city. The National Guard was called on in a few occasions to restore order. Once the proxy wars calmed down in the 1970s, the protests stopped and the world returned to normal. By 1975, the class levels of the various areas of Kidron had been established. Okay. Calvin and Loch Norte were firmly working class to poor, and the hills were firmly in the hands of the upper class. Downtown Kidron and Stanton were largely varied between middle and upper class, and Jordana was for the most part middle class with a few working class neighborhoods. The various levels of affluence would shift as time went on. Serena Calvin, who is a character in Book 1, was born in Calvin and spent her formative years there, only to move to Jordana just before entering junior high. Dorian Astrapios, main character of the series, spent nearly his whole life in Stanton, with his apartment being on the border of Stanton and Kidron. Okay, here is a map. See that of the U.S. Zoom in a little here. Okay, a little bit different. That took me 4 days to do. Okay? I'm very proud of it. Okay, Canada, by the way, doesn't exist. I'll let you read that. It gets complicated. Quebec's a country, though. Mexico is a country, as we have said. It's a lot more Aztec. And the Maya also have their own country. Okay, they control the Yucatan. It is called Guatemala. Okay, we talk about South America. We got Brazil. We got the Spanish colonies, coming to be called Argentina, and a few others. We move into Australia, okay, which is slightly different. A lot went on there, okay. History of the 20th century includes the Great War, not World War I, bit different there. Then we got a post-war period, which is essentially the Great Depression. I compare it a lot more to our timeline because it's easier to do that narratively. There is no Armenian genocide, but Still no love lost. Okay, the Great Roman War starts off in the mid 1930s. Okay, starts off in 1935 when they depose Alexander the 10th. Okay, as the Pope. Okay, and it is a mess. The Romans actually come up with the atomic bomb first, but the Allies managed to steal it, managed to steal the stuff, make theirs in record time, and threaten the city of Rome with it, saying, knock it off, or we'll send you to hell. Okay, so they go to the table and basically say, look, we both got it, so you just take what you got, leave everything else alone. Okay, by the way, they control Libya, the Balkans, except for Greece, and all the way to the Black Sea, meaning they also control Romania and part of Moldova. Okay. Okay. Post-war period and Cold War, USSR and the West become enemies. Poland joins in with the USSR, just like in our timeline, and so does Prussia. Okay. Prussia, by the way, is a country. Okay. Some of the best spies actually come out of Germany. Okay. Afterwards, the USSR falls, just like in our timeline. Things are a little bit different. Siberia and Kamchatka are able to declare independence, and a few countries maintain communism. Okay, should make some of you happy. Others go hardcore capitalist, and Uzbek is one of those. Okay. The terror wars happen in 2001. There are bombings in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and New Orleans. Okay, a little bit worse. So things got worse in this world. Okay, and it destroyed quite a bit. Okay, we got the hidden history. This is where I discuss the Sons of Man. Okay. The Sons of Man were originally founded in Kansas City, Missouri in 1848, following the events surrounding various townspeople who were thought to be witches. After investigation and interrogation, it was found that these people were in fact fae, and included representatives from the Valkyrie, Ogre, Sylph, and Elf breeds. The micro-community numbered merely 38 individuals, ranging in age from teens to elderly. Each was hanged in the drop-gate fashion and then shot in the head point blank to ensure that they were in fact dead. It was in response to this that Jacob Fredericks, a freed slave and preacher, founded the Sons of Man. He saw how dangerous the Fae were. He saw their strength, speed, and power as a very obvious threat. The Sons of Man would grow quickly among the landed and educated elites in the middle class in the form of a secret society. Referring to unclean food, such as ham in accordance with kosher law as depicted in Deuteronomy, served as a means of initiation and coded speech for members. As certain jurisdictions noticed increased covert activity, more soldiers were deemed necessary, and recruitment extended into the working class. By 1868, most of the society was blue-collar, with a stark minority being educated past basic literacy. When the racial hysteria following the Union's victory during the Southern Rebellion, many of the dissident and anti-emancipation groups were absorbed into the Sons of Man, and instead of hunting Fae, they hunted former slaves. However, because of the society's founder was a freed slave, a purge was enacted, and these individuals, along with their ideology, were expunged. Because of the ubiquity of the chapters reaching out from Kansas City and to all coastlines, the necessity to maintain not only a hidden presence, but also a pleasing presence became vital. The Sons of Man adopted a public persona similar to that of the Freemasons, in that they were simply a social group of people that shared similar views on politics and other things. Coming up on an hour. This was made official by 1883. With the start of the Great War, the ideology of the Sons of Man spread out into Europe and the Middle East. It was at this time that their official stand of the society became even more egalitarian as Americans came into contact with Muslims, Jews, and various other religions filled with humans that knew something was not quite right. Although through the 1920s and 1930s, covert murders and disappearances took their toll on the Fey populations in several countries. Okay. Where was I? When the Great Roman War broke out, the Sons of Man faded into the background, where the society quickly worked to grow its economic base and influence. By 1960, there was a chapter of YTA, abbreviation of the Greek words for Sons of Man, in every major university in the U.S. These served as a means of recruitment while also providing an avenue for members to find places in society. Less than 10% of the initiates were granted full knowledge of the purpose of the society. Recruitment was not only done through universities, but also through websites and select businesses in any given city. The first indication of the business is found in the name. It will be some sort of construction based on YTA or SOM. Websites will often have a semi-hidden area where the qualifying questions are asked, and then a meeting location is given upon the successful completion. Literal underground bunkers are common in cities where their construction is easy to complete. These are entered through hidden passages and brick doors, cleverly hidden from casual view. Further questions under armed threat are conducted, with the purpose being to deter any unwanted individuals from gaining access. Once a new member is confirmed, the work begins, and it is focused on training and education on the nature of the Fae. The end goal of the organization is to eradicate the Fae from the world and for only true humans to be left alive. Within the last 20 years, the Sons of Man has operated on a semi-autonomous cell structure, meaning no two cells know where the other is or how many might be active within. Each of these cells report to a local governing body, which maintains this veil of secrecy. Each local governing body reports to the head of the society. While this office has been held by multiple individuals throughout history, currently it sits firmly in a manor house in Ithaca, New York. And that is plot relevant. Okay, I go into the history of the gods, which I'm not going to do. And I also have a list of confirmed ones. Now these are avatars. Where's that? There we go. Quite the list, isn't it? Okay. Some of which are dead, others are alive. Okay. And I also talk about the Black Death and why we don't know about the Fae. It's called the Oath of Secrecy. Okay. See, the Fae were being blamed for the Black Death. In our timeline, it was Jews. But in this timeline, it was the Fae. So they decided to go underground. They basically made themselves not exist, which I think is brilliant. Then we go into the Chinese conspiracy. Okay. The Ming and their successor, the Qing, owe their existence to a semi-rogue organization of Luoduan. They called themselves the Divine Wisdom, and were supposed to be the representative foreign government that was the Yuan dynasty. While the Luoduan were, of course, Fey, they were loyal to the local Chinese ministerial government in Manchu. They fomented the rebellion and installed the new Chinese imperial government. After 2.5 centuries, it became evident that the Qing had become decadent and oppressive. The Divine Wisdom attempted to covertly overthrow the very government they had installed. The operatives failed to secure the assassination of the emperor and were forced to commit suicide rather than be captured. The Divine Wisdom, however, pressed on and waited. When the Japanese invaded and swept through Manchuria, the Divine Wisdom was able to secure the rest of the Chinese Empire from conquest. Despite the victory, the organization had split into 2 separate parties. One wanted to maintain imperial power and isolate from the West, and the other wanted to embrace it. When China fractured, it was the Divine Wisdom that founded 2 of the 3 new nations, Qin and Canton. Today, both governments are dominated by the Divine Wisdom. They have since brought humans into the fold to act as their operatives. No one outside the highest reaches of government knows the truth. Okay. Also, the UN. bit different in this timeline. Okay? A lot more protective. They also have a lot more overt power. Okay? They've got bases in Switzerland, San Jose, New York, Mombasa, Santiago, and Okinawa. Okay? Those are regional offices with the capital being in Geneva. Okay? There's a lot of things that go into here. It is your job to do things. Okay? Now, I also go into the Security Council. Okay? And a couple of asterisks here. These, for the most part, do have nukes. Okay? We've got the U.S., the French Empire, Japanese Empire, Roman Empire, Great Britain, otherwise known as the UK, and Congo are all in the Security Council. Second tier, few more countries. Third tier is basically everybody else. Lots of them, few pages. Okay, and then we go into the British Commonwealth. Okay, these are those that serve the UK but are technically independent, and the US does not control Guam or Samoa or Tonga. Okay. Also, New Caledonia doesn't exist. It's called New Cornwall because shut up. Okay, we got the flags. All of these are which available for purchase on my website. That is vimandvigorelli.com. It's in the shop. You'll see it. Okay, I believe they're 20, 25, something like that. Okay, that's what's behind me. I've got a few others. Okay, enough of that. So, unfortunately, I have no idea how to see your chat. Like I said, it's my first go. I've never done this before. Okay. What do you do? So, well, I've been yakking at you for a little bit over an hour. I think we'll call it there. Okay. I'm going to be back Sunday with a gaming stream, and I'm going to figure out how to put chat in. Okay. So I can actually see you guys talking / yelling at me. What? And I think it'll be kind of nice. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm going to play. It might be Hogwarts. Could be Baldur's Gate. I don't know. That'll be Baldur's Gate 2. I'm not playing Baldur's Gate 3. I've watched streams of it, and people that I trust don't like the game. So I'm not exactly a fan. Okay. Also, I really don't feel like dropping $50. I just spent more than $1,000 on this whole thing that I've got going on. I've got 2 monitors. I've got a camera. I've got a big gaming rig under here. Okay. Thank God for noise canceling. Otherwise, you'd be getting a really nasty hum, which you might still be. I don't know. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take off, guys. Links to my websites are in the description. Excuse me. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am available there. Okay. So take care now.